Good evening and welcome to all my dears. In our previous session, we had talk about the introduction of peptic ulcers, and along with that, we had discussed about the different layers of stomach. Now we are focusing our camera or focusing our endoscope or focusing our microscope very near or very closer to the mucosa of our stomach. Means that your stomach is having 4 layered walls with the innermost layer is mucosa. Even with an endoscope, while viewing the inner side of our stomach, you can see some finger-like projections in our stomach. Morphologically, the inner layer, you can see some finger-like projections. These projections are, or these finger-like projections are known as gastric rugae. It is the innermost layer, mucous membrane, and there is, you can see some sieve-like or a finger-like projections can be seen. These are known as gastric rugae. Again, the microscopical study of the rugae, you can see some specialized cells in our gastric mucosa or our gastric rugae. Here it is the projected area, projection, and it is the depressed or pit of the gastric pit. It is otherwise known as gastric pit. With very close observation, you can understand that this gastric mucous membrane are filled with tightly bind with specialized epithelial cells. In between that columnar, it is the columnar epithelium. In between the columnar epithelium, you can see some specialized cells. These specialized cells are known as foveolar cells. Again, there is columnar epithelial cells. Again, there are some specialized cells. These cells are known as P cells or parietal cells. Again, columnar cells In between the columnar, you can see some another set of specialized cells. These cells are known as C cells or chief cells. Again, there is some specialized cells can be seen. These cells are known as G cells. Then another set of specialized cells can be also be seen. These cells are known as D cells or delta cells. That means in between the very superficial level of layer of columnar epithelium, it is intermingled with some specialized cells, and these specialized cells having specialized functions also. Regarding the foveolar cells, let us study about the foveolar cells. These foveolar cells are particularly specially responsible for the synthesis and secretion of mucin or mucosa. So the mucous membrane were always filled with a thick layer of mucus, which is mainly synthesized and secreted by the foveolar cells. And the same mucin or the mucosa is very, very rich in bicarbonate, that is HCO3. So one of the main function or main aim of the synthesis of the foveolar cells to secrete the bicarbonate is for resist the very severe corrosive effect of gastric acid. That means very near to the mucosa of our stomach, these are the gastric rugae. The topmost or the very innermost level of the mucosa secretes the mucus, and which is very, very rich in bicarbonate, and the presence of, only because of the presence of bicarbonates, it can resist the corrosive effect or the entry of the acid molecules in the inner layer of the cells. That can be dealt in another class. Okay. Next, about the P cells or parietal cells. These P cells are very responsible for the main function of synthesis of gastric hydrochloric acid. Regarding the C cells or the chief cells, the chief cells are responsible in the synthesis and secretion of very important answer, secretion of molecules of pepsin. One of the main factors which are responsible for the production of peptic ulcers are pepsin and hydrochloric acid. That can be studied. Okay. Then pepsin. Then regarding the G cells. G cells secretes a particular neurotransmitter or hormone known as gastrin. There are so many functions belongs to gastrin, but one of the main function of gastrin is to stimulate the P cells to secrete the hydrochloric acid, and gastrin is also having one of the main function, that is, you know that the lower end of the esophagus, it is a sphinctering contraction or a gastroesophageal valve or esophageal valve. The valvular function of the lower end of the esophagus is mainly regulated by or controlled by the hormone gastrin. That is why you can see immediately after the process of swallowing, the lower end of the esophagus is completely closed. It is only because of the quality of the gastrin over the circular muscles of the lower end of the esophagus. That also can be studied in later classes. Next, about the D cells. D cells are specially responsible for the synthesis of somatostatin. The hormone somatostatin that inhibits the G cells, or the somatostatin that inhibit the P cells for what? In cases of hyperchlorhydria, that means increased secretion of hydrochloric acid, that may cause the in hyperchlorhydria, increased HCl results in erosion when it fails to heal the erosive level. The same may get pierced into the submucosa or muscularis, or it can be up to serosa. That means erosion, then ulceration, and perforation. So, uncontrolled overstimulation of the P cells that may result in hyperchlorhydria, and there are so many other factors that can also stimulate the P cells to secrete the gastric HCl. So, to prevent such a occurrence, a natural balance or a natural regulations, that means the interior of the stomach pH. What is the pH of gastric lumen? Being acidic media, the gastric lumen will have a pH with a 1.3 to 3.5. So, it has to be regulated in a very gentle manner. That is why there are a balanced regulation between the different types of cells are very, very important to know by we people. So, Once more, we can study the specialized cells which are responsible for a normal healthy stomach. Number one is foveolar cells, which are responsible for the synthesis of mucin and which is very rich in bicarbonate, that means alkali. Next one is regarding the V cells or parietal cell, which are responsible for secretion of gastric HCl, hydrochloric acid. Then C cells or chief cells, which are responsible for synthesis of pepsin. Number 3. Number 4, G cells, which are responsible for synthesis of gastrin. Then D cells or delta cells, which are responsible for synthesis of somatostatin. So a joint effort of all these cells are mainly regulated by our central nervous system, especially by the parasympathetic nervous system, and thereby a normal or natural process of or normal regulation of gastric functions takes place. Thank you for watching. Next can be studied in another class. Okay.